New Brexit food rules are set to be delayed again to avoid higher prices. We're going to read into this exclusive from iNews, you guys. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Reganelite here with an exclusive from iNews with the headline that the new Brexit food rules are set to be delayed again to avoid higher prices. Border checks will be delayed again until July next year. Guys, while you're here, make sure you hit the like button and share it across social media so others are notified of this video. I don't think anyone is kind of surprised by this, but at the same time, delaying this is also not helpful as well. As long as we are out of the EU, we need to have these implemented at some point. And unfortunately, the Labour government are damned if they do and damned if they don't because of the situation. They're very keen not to talk about Brexit and the impact that it has. But the reality is that Brexit is a problem that will never go away, and it will always be something that will consistently harm us. Every single one of our lives have been affected by Brexit, unless, of course, you're filthy rich, whereas you can just literally buy your way out of your problems. But for some people, we don't have that. For some of us, we have to pay more for a living. Some of us have to pay more for the cost of buying things in and out of the EU. Some of us have to queue longer to travel to the EU and out as well, getting our passport stamps. We can only be in the EU for a certain amount of time as well. There are lots of negatives and still no positives to Brexit. And this issue here with regards to the full rules, I totally understand Labour's position of delaying it, and I'm pretty sure I've talked about this particular subject before. But at the same time as well, the EU will not be happy about this with us continuously differing and delaying on this. However, the consequences of implementing it now, especially considering the situation that the economy is in, the cost of living crisis that we are in, how many businesses that are in at the moment, the struggles that many businesses are in, is also entirely understandable. But this is also another perception that people can say is, and people can make this assumption in the comments down below, saying, see, Labour are just doing the same as the Conservatives, kicking the can down the road and not actually dealing with this situation. And we're not addressing the issues surrounding Brexit. And as of right now, at the time of this recording, I agree with you. They will not, they're not challenging and dealing with Brexit. And the thing is that nobody really wants to talk about the white elephant in the room, even though it is a problem that definitely needs to be addressed at some point. Can't just continue to ignore the damage that it is causing. Sooner or later, politicians are going to have to look at it and address it. So let's read what the IS had to say on this story, guys. So, Brexit checks on fruit and vegetables being imported from the EU are once again set to be delayed by the government amid fears that they could push up food prices. The government is looking to delay the controls until the 1st of July 2025, following warnings that it could add to inflation, damage food supply and put companies out of business, according to a linked ministerial letter seen by the Eye. The checks have been due to come into force next month, but were delayed until January. They have now been delayed again for another 6 months. So it's entirely possible that that DEFRA and the departments within government have been looking at this much more closely and realised that perhaps the damage is going to be so bad that they cannot afford to continue it. But then I think they're being very careful of not talking too much about this. I would not be surprised whatsoever if this comes to fruition and they do decide to publicly say that they are going to delay it. But yeah, if you literally just see there, we don't want to add to inflation. You don't want to damage food supply. And obviously, we don't want businesses going bust. Considering how many businesses have suffered over the last 14 years, we want to try and protect as many businesses as we possibly can. So just some of those alone are definitely potential reasons of why to delay this. But again, at the same time, we can't keep delaying it forever as well. And I'm sure many of you will agree with me. It is the first time the new Labour government has delayed import checks, and that are a necessary consequence of the UK leaving the EU single market, and which were pushed back several times under Conservatives amid fear of food price inflation and border chaos. And in 2022, the UK imported more than half of its fruit and vegetables, nearly 8% of them from the EU. Failing to delay the checks would have added £200 million to the fruit and veg industry, annual costs which firms would have to pass on to the consumers, French Produce Consortium's chief executive Nigel Jenney warned last month. So, yeah, everyone would have to pay more, which nobody really wants to do. Environment Minister Baroness Hayman confirmed in a letter to the industry seen by the eye that the government is looking to extend the easement for fruit and vegetable imports from the EU to the 1st of July 2025, and it would be launching a consultation on the issue shortly. The industry said the delay would help companies prepare and ultimately minimise the costs for them and consumers. Well, yeah, if this is something industries need. They need assurances. Businesses and industries need assurances, and they need to be kept to. The problem was one of the biggest problems we had under the Conservatives was they would not keep their words on things. They would change and chop and change things, or they would delay things, and they would not be straight and open and honest with the industries and businesses. This is something that Labour need to do. They need to show that they're not like the Conservatives. Now, obviously, I'd be hypocritical to say, well, Regan, they've just delayed this. Well, it's not been 100% confirmed that Labour are doing this. It's obviously entirely possible that this is what they're going to do, and they're going to push it all the way back to July next year. But if they are open and honest and say, okay, we're definitely going to do this on the 1st, and be open and honest with businesses and industries and say, we have to do it then. You've got 1 year to start preparing for this, to make it to minimise the damage as much as they possibly can, then it makes sense. But they can't keep kicking this can down the road, because they'd just be just like the Conservatives, refusing to deal with the problem that's sitting on their doorstep. But some of us believe the situation highlighted the need for the government to achieve its goal of an EU veterinary agreement to alleviate the needs for many checks on food imports and exports. Yeah, so this is the other thing that as well, the veterinary agreement, which is something that this Labour government are trying to push through as well, which would help alleviate a lot of this as well. Stella Creasy, chair of the Labour Movement for Europe, welcomed Minister's attempts to resolve the mess left by the Conservatives, but said British people still face paying the price of Tory hard Brexit through the higher prices unless the government fulfills a promise to sign the veterinary deal. The delay will add pressure to Keir Starmer's strike a veterinary deal with the EU as part of its desired relationship research, which would allow easier fruit and vegetable imports as well as for meat and animal produce. The government otherwise faced kicking the can down the road indefinitely or biting the bullet and accepting higher food prices and a possible inflation uptick. Any softer Brexit deal could be years in the making, however, posing a risk that checks will eventually have to be implemented at great cost, only to be removed later. And this is something I've discussed, we've talked about in previous videos before, that you don't want to be implementing checks and then having to change them later because it's going to cost industries. So there is that caveat as well that needs to be highlighted. And Anne Menden, director of the UK in a Changing Europe think tank, said Labour's move to delay the controls shows that despite a change in government and Keir Starmer's reset of EU relations, Brexit raises some really tricky practical problems and will continue to do so under the government's red lines. Professor Merton also warned that the delay could damage the Prime Minister's negotiation position on a veterinary deal as he seeks to carry out a Brexit reset and foster closer EU relations. Well, the thing is the difference here is that it was a very negative. The Conservatives were a very negative approach towards Europe, whereas things are a lot more calmer with this Labour government. I would say the relationship is a lot better already with the Conservatives gone. Sanitary and phytosanitary (SPS) checks on several types of EU food imports, including meat, fish and dairy, were introduced from the 30th of April this year following years of delay by the Conservatives. And despite an omission from the former government last year, the controls would add 0.2% for food price inflation over 3 years. But fruit and vegetables were exempt from much of the post-Brexit red tape until October this year, with the Tories later confirming they intended to push this further back until January 2025. This exemption is now set to extend it to July 2025. Baroness Hayman's letter has confirmed. She also said the government was still reviewing proposals to allow authorised companies to carry out their own checks away from official facilities, and whether to downgrade several types of food imports from medium to low risk categories, including turnips, beetroot, ginger, carrots, sweet potato, turmeric, celery, swede, horseradish and radish, meaning that they will face fewer checks. Reacting to the delay, Jenney told the Eye on Thursday, "We are delighted that the new government is listening to the beginning of understanding the concerns and needs of UK industry and UK consumers." Once we receive further clarity, the delay will allow the industry to understand specifically what the government is asking for to manage with European partners in a timely manner, and will minimise the confusion and ultimately minimise the cost to industry and the cost to consumers. Yes. However, they have a long way to go to unpick the catastrophic mess the Conservative government has placed our borders in. Chrisley welcomed the move by pointing out that cheese, meat, eggs, seeds and other foodstuff were still caught up in the bonkers food import regime. I absolutely welcome the government's trying to get to grips with the madness of the Brexit border tax, but there is much more to do to resolve the mess that the Tories' hard Brexit has delivered. This should be the start of the process as it tries to protect British consumers because this is inflationary. The government should be looking at how quickly it can sign an SPS veterinary deal and rejoin the Pan-Euro-Mediterranean PEM convention, and PEM could happen. We absolutely welcome ministers trying to sort this out. We know there is more to do, and in the meantime, British consumers shouldn't be paying the price of Tory hard Brexit through higher prices and food shortages. Professor Merton, meanwhile, warned that delaying the checks could help UK consumers, but it could also damage the minister's negotiating position with the EU as it tries to secure a veterinary agreement to alleviate many of the food-based checks. On the one hand, this spares us the potential of increased food prices and delays the import of fresh foods. And on the other, as long as we haven't implemented everything we should, it reduces our incentives with the European Union to negotiate any kind of amendment to the existing situation with us, i.e. a veterinary agreement. If the EU aren't facing the full impacts of checks, why would they sit down and negotiate? They've got a comprehensive advantage. They can export to us easier than we can export to them because we haven't already got all the checks in place. And he's absolutely right with that. If the UK checks were in place, one of the things you could imagine is UK exporters putting pressure on their governments to do something about it. As long as Starmer maintains red lines that prohibit the UK from rejoining the EU or its single market and customs union, Brexit-related problems like this would continue. The next set of problems might be about energy corporation or fish or whatever, but there will always be issues, he said. The Department of Environment through Rural Affairs said it would not comment on the leaks. No. So, therefore, I have not said anything on it, guys. But we'll have to obviously see whether or not this is going to be confirmed or not. But the I have said that they've seen a letter confirming it. So, we'll run on the assumption that they are going to delay it even further. Again, Brexit is the problem that it's not going away, guys. And I think, this is one of many issues that we have that we need to resolve with our relationship with our European partners. Some of them that we've been delaying for too long. It's not helpful at all. While at the same time, implementing it will hurt us. But delaying it is also hurting us in a way as well. Especially on whether that Keir Starmer obviously wants to secure a veterinary agreement as well. So, on one hand, it's helpful. On one hand, it's not. So, like I said at the start, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. And it is a frustrating thing to say the least, you guys. Do I think Labour are making the right moves here? If someone was to ask me straight on the spot, I'm going to say yes for now because it's still only 2 months since they've come in. I'm sure they are fully aware of the situation. I am prepared to give Labour an opportunity to try and fix this mess, to try and fix the mess that the Conservatives have left. I am prepared to give them more time to do that, a lot more than the Conservatives have been, because the Conservatives have left everything in a bloody mess. So I am prepared to give Labour a chance to show that they can do something about this. But this is just one of many, many issues that Labour are having to deal with. That is for sure, you guys. But enough about what I think. What do you guys honestly think? What do you think about the new Brexit food rules set to be delayed again to avoid higher prices? Is it perfectly understandable for you to do so? Do you think it's actually a bad thing that it weakens our hands on a potential future veterinary agreement that the Labour government wants to have with the EU, or possible future renegotiations of a Brexit deal several years down the line? Let me know your thoughts and more down in the comments section below. If you found this video interesting, please hit the like button. We greatly appreciate it. Share it across social media so others are notified of this video, and subscribe because it really does help support the channel. And if you want to go one step further, financially support me and the work that I do here, you could do so by becoming a YouTube member for as little as 99p, or join me on Rumble or Patreon for exclusive content on those platforms. So thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to catch you all very, very soon.